Globalization and cultural hybridity in terms of the Hallyu wave. Globalization and cultural hybridity has spread so quickly since the introduction of the internet. From random content on YouTube going viral for unprecedented reasons, to the rapid expansion of companies such as McDonald's or Starbucks to all corners of the world. Technological advancement allowed for greater connectivity and access to information instantly. It transformed everything from the way we communicate to the way we commute and connect. The population today is so interconnected that globalization and cultural hybridity are a topic we must discuss in terms of whether it came about at random or through calculated design. To investigate how globalization and cultural hybridity have affected the cultures and traditions, for better or worse, in this podcast we'll be dissecting its effect on the Korean pop culture. How has South Korea been impacted by globalization? I want to start by defining what globalization actually is. Globalization refers to the increasing interconnectedness and interdependence of economies, societies, and cultures across the world. This is facilitated by technological advancement in communication, transportation, and machinery. A commonly used definition is that it compresses the space-time nexus, which accurately describes how the internet worked as a catalyst for globalization. You have probably heard of Hollywood, the American film industry's cultural phenomenon that spread far and wide thanks to the marketing associated with it. If anything, Hollywood itself is a giant advertisement for the United States post-World War II and the Cold War. This soft tool was used to Americanize the world, one audiovisual media at a time. Now you may be asking what this has to do with how globalization has impacted South Korea. And to that I would answer you by introducing what is known today as the Hallyu Korean wave, or Hallyu. It is a term used to describe the Korean entertainment industry and its significantly growing popularity on the global stage. To be able to discuss what is happening now, we need to first jump back to the 1950s when Korean War devastated the economy and the country's culture was in shambles. Poverty within the borders was rampant and the country was receiving support from the United States to remain afloat economically. As a result, South Korean youth gravitated towards imported media content from foreign countries such as Japan and the United States due to their own cultures lacking a collective identity to produce its own popular media. In the 1990s, the success of boy bands domestically and in neighboring countries such as China and Vietnam meant Korean culture would begin to develop post-war, and it followed in the footsteps of the United States by manufacturing musical groups. The process of artificially fostering and training groups, which was a successful venture in the 1990s to 2000s for the West, was seen with NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, but this later fizzled out when these groups disbanded or had scandals that tarnished their image for their young fan base. Entertainment companies in South Korea manufactured and curated images for their groups and artists that would generally adhere to the conservative and newfound culture that was emerging in South Korea. The space-time nexus description of globalization shows how compressed this model was actually, as it happened to be almost simultaneous that the Korean industry was learning from the mistakes of the Western media. They created idol groups that were meant as role models for their youth and had to uphold a certain image along with talent to be successful. Global capitalism and its digital revolution meant that the entertainment industry catapulted the free trade happening globally and mainstreaming services able to monetize content to generate revenue for privately owned companies. What is the concept of cultural hybridity and how has it emerged in the context of globalization? Cultural hybridity, simply put, is the blending and mixing of different cultural practices and traditions that form a new cultural expression and understanding. In a world where immigration and multicultural societies exist as a result of war and poverty, it is the new norm for cultural hybridity to increase as a result of globalization. In the context of popular Korean media, the music, films, and television of the nation has surpassed its borders and made its way worldwide. As seen with some groups now perform an English version of their singles or collaborate with American artists. We are able to see an example of creolization in the underground Korean hip-hop scene, which pays homage to the American hip-hop artists and their craft in a way that makes sense to Koreans. Two television shows come to mind. one being Show Me the Money, which even features Snoop Dogg as a guest judge in season 4, and the other being High School Rapper. These survival competitive shows allowed us to see a traditionally American art being adopted into Korean cultures and allowed youth to be able to tell their stories and compete in a creative manner. We can say it is a form of cultural globalization, and some will argue that it is a form of cultural appropriation, as older Korean culture did not view African Americans in a favorable light due to their skin color and the negative portrayal of them in Hollywood media. See, when you export a culture that is ever evolving to a developing region and your power as the cultural imperialist wavers, the original ideology you implemented develops beyond your control. The younger generation of Koreans are beginning to understand that the issues the previous generation had with other races is a result of post-colonialism being implemented by America or Japan. This form of cultural imperialism is now losing its power over Korea slowly, as seen with the rise of K-pop, K-drama, and Korean content that is now a strong cultural export for the country. As opposed to saying they are a new form of media to reverse the American cultural imperialism of the entertainment industry, it is more accurate to view it as a cultural hybridization of Korean culture with American media style, but fine-tuned to fit in more with Korean values. How has the process of cultural hybridity influenced the development of new cultural forms and expressions, and what are the implications of this for cultural identity and diversity? You cannot gain a new style without losing out on the essence of the old one. The tension between cultural homogenization and cultural heterogenization will continue to grow alongside the popularity of Korean media. While the success of it was organic, Korean entertainment was later nurtured by the Korean government as a cultural export, designing cultural policy plans that commercialized it as a commodity in every aspect in order to grow capital. See, there is an overarching theme in the world that's main purpose is continued economic growth, and as you guessed it, it is neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is an economic and political ideology that emphasizes free markets, individualism, and the reduction of government intervention in economic affairs. While it is theoretically believed to promote economic growth and prosperity for all, its practical implementation has often led to increased inequality, privatization of public goods and services, and a reduced government funding for social welfare. Additionally, its emphasis on globalization and free trade agreements has often benefited developed countries at the expense of newly developing countries, leading to a concentration of wealth and power at the hands of a few global elites. In aiming to produce more Western-friendly content to entice global viewership, Korean media opens itself up to global criticism, such as the lack of diversity in the storylines and castings, to implications of audiences viewing and judging the culture from their own domestic views. At the present moment, the criticism has been taken on board and modified aspects of the entertainment industry, but soon new iterations become the standard and the industry gets revolutionized into a new one if not retained properly, which means that the fan base would move on to the next cool new culture to become the entertainment world leader. To conclude, the issues associated with globalization in this case were used to pull South Korea out of poverty and into the limelight, which helped with economic growth for their country and their culture to be appreciated globally. Cultural hybridity, on the other hand, does pose a threat as the entertainment industry now adjusts itself to be even more marketable, meaning that it will keep changing to appease the wants of volatile demand by international consumers. This means it will keep being diluted to the point that it will lose its roots and unique selling point in order to fit in, which is the byproduct of neoliberalism, unless the industry policies enact a method to sustain its charm.